Hi, my name is Thomas Hannon and I am a postdoctoral researcher at Griffith University. Today I'm going to present some of the research that myself and some of my colleagues, Dr. Jacob Keach and Associate Professor Cara Hamilton, conducted last year looking at the learning experience of undergraduate students during the COVID-19 pandemic. In particular today, I'll be looking at or explaining a study that we did looking at the use of the theory of planned behaviour and planning to better understand this online learning experience. So, as many of us have experienced, COVID-19 obviously had a very significant impact on the higher education sector. In particular, with universities being required to move everything online or start to utilise remote learning in order to help slow the spread of the virus. Now, this move to online obviously happened very rapidly, and students then not only had to worry about their health concerns, so their own health and also the health of their family in regards to the virus, but they also had concerns regarding maintaining that academic achievement. And many of these concerns and this rapid change obviously had a very strong impact on the psychological well-being of the students. Now in Australia, there were some benefits highlighted to this online learning. In particular, some students indicated that moving everything online gave a lot more flexibility. Students were able to access a lot of the course material a lot more readily. And also when provided, students felt as though there was a little bit more support from the teaching team. So this might be through via increased virtual meetings, more access or more availability through email. So there were some benefits with Australian universities moving to this entirely online process. Now, although there may be some benefits to online learning, there are, of course, multiple challenges with entirely remote learning. So some of these challenges can include things like trying to facilitate that social connection that is really important for peers, making sure that students have suitable equipment and resources available to them through remote learning, and also trying to make sure that students are maintaining that high level of engagement with the course material. So with a lot of these challenges, we can then start to see some of the impact that this might have on retention rates of students, but then also making sure that students are getting that really high quality educational experience. And one way that we can really try to identify some of the other factors that impact these elements of online learning is by looking at some of these social cognitive constructs. So trying to understand students' beliefs and attitudes towards course engagement, the level of motivation or their intentions to engage in course material, and then also starting to look at some of those self-regulatory processes. So looking at their ability to manage their time effectively, their ability to plan out their engagement with course material. And so that's where the research that we've been conducting has been really trying to figure out what are some of these processes that can really help students during this online learning experience. So this study was based on the theory of planned behaviour, and according to this theory, one of the most strongest determinants of behaviour is somebody's intention to actually perform that behaviour. So let's say, for example, we're looking at students studying behaviour. In order to predict their actual engagement in this behaviour, we might want to look at their intentions to actually study. And their intentions are the result of three different belief systems. So firstly, their attitudes about the behaviour, if it's going to be beneficial or good or bad for them. The level of subjective norms, so looking here at their belief that other people important to them want them to perform their behaviour. And then lastly, perceived behavioural control. So looking at the person's belief about the ease or the difficulty in actually performing that behaviour. And so when this theory predicts that when these three beliefs are strong, they're more likely to have stronger intentions to perform the behaviour, and then they're more likely to actually do the behaviour in question. Now, as many of us may experience, intentions don't always directly lead to behaviour. We may set a lot of intentions to do something, whether it's a new healthy behaviour or our intention to stop an unhealthy behaviour. Sometimes it can be very difficult to actually translate these intentions into subsequent action. And this is where a variety of other self-regulatory processes can actually come into play and facilitate that translation of intentions into action. And one of these self-regulatory skills is planning. So planning can be seen as this form of self-regulation, and it's actually a very strong predictor of academic success, particularly in the online learning environment. So students who are able to effectively regulate their time management, for example, are more likely to engage in course material and succeed academically. So we can think of planning as almost this mental simulation of when, where, and how we're going to act in line with previously set intentions. And there's a lot of research, particularly in the health behavior domain, that really shows that planning mediates that intention-behavior relationship. So planning is a very important skill in facilitating people's translation of intentions into subsequent action. So the aim of this study in particular was really to test this augmented theory of planned behavior model, which incorporates planning to really understand whether change in these social cognition constructs is predictive of academic achievement during the COVID-19 pandemic. So in terms of academic achievement, we're looking at the final marks of the student, and we essentially wanted to examine whether changes in these cognitions over the course of the semester is predictive of final course grades. So we conducted this study using a sample of first-year psychology students back in 2020. And we employed a three-wave longitudinal design. So students completed the survey at baseline, so in the first couple of weeks of the teaching period, and then completed the same survey halfway through the teaching period, and then at the end of the semester is when we collected their final course grades. In terms of the measures that we used in the study, all of the measures were directed towards engagement in the course content. So for example, for the TPB constructs, attitudes was measured with 4 items, looking at, for instance, my engaging in course content across the trimester would be good versus bad. And with planning, we looked at the extent to which students had actually planned to engage in the course content over the course of the teaching period. And as I previously mentioned, we used 3 time points in the design of this study, so we can see time 1 and time 2, the students completed all of the same measures, and at time 3 is when we collected their final mark as the outcome variable. Now, in terms of calculating the change scores in all of the constructs, we use residualized change, and this was applied to all of the TPB constructs as well as planning. And to do this, what we did was we regressed the follow-up measurements, so time 2, onto the baseline measures of the constructs at time 1. So this provided us a residualized change score for each of the constructs, which is essentially the follow-up measurement with the baseline measure partialed out. And so we use this to conceptualize the change in each of these constructs over the teaching semester. For the hypothesized model, we use variance-based SEMs in WARP PLS, and in this model we use the dependent variable as the final course mark, which is what we used to represent the academic achievement of the student over the course of the semester. So presented on the screen now is the results of the final model. As we can see from the fit indices, the model did display a good fit to the data. Breaking down the model sort of separately, looking at the TPB constructs as theorized, we do see, for example, that changes in attitudes towards engagement in the course content was predictive of changes in intentions to engage in the course content, and likewise for subjective norms and perceived behavioral control. So this was all consistent with the theoretical model of the theory of planned behaviour. Looking at the more volitional side of the model, we see that changes in intentions was predictive of changes in planning to engage in the course content, and both changes in intentions and planning were both positively and significantly predictive of higher academic achievement. So students who increase their intentions to engage in the course content and increase their planning to engage in the course content subsequently achieved a greater academic achievement than those who didn't. And looking importantly at the mediation effect, we do find a significant mediation effect here. So we see that changes in intentions was predictive of academic achievement via change in planning. So as we predicted that students who increased their intentions also increased their planning, which subsequently predicted this increase in academic achievement or their final course grades. And to conclude, the study does provide some useful insight into some of the factors influencing students' online and learning experience during the COVID-19 pandemic. In particular, the study really highlights the utility of the theory of planned behaviour to provide insight into some of the thoughts or the cognitions towards course engagement. In particular, the study really highlights that changes in some of these social cognitions, in particular changes in intentions and planning over the course of the semester, is positively predictive of academic achievement. So as educators, it would be useful for future research to try to identify whether intervention strategies can be used to try and modify some of these cognitions and beliefs as a way to increase planning and motivation to engage in the course material and subsequently enhance a student's learning experience and their academic achievement. So that concludes my talk on this study. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out, and I am more than happy to discuss any of these findings or any of this research with you further.